In terms of the aspect of wisdom, where you're speaking about knowledge, at least I think it's knowledge in terms of it's intellectual, rather than I separate out for myself. Wisdom is personal understanding through one's own experience, and knowledge is something that I can learn from listening, reading, things of that nature. So am I correct in that what you're saying is the first step is the step of intellectual understanding in terms of understanding emptiness? That's so. Even though I definitely don't I don't have wisdom of the subject. It was on and I
turned it off before. Okay, there we go.
I don't have wisdom of that subject, but I'm here and I want to learn and I'm open.
So have you had a chance to learn about the subject called mind and mental factors?
I believe I have, somewhat.
There are 5 mental factors that are called the omnipresent mental factors.
Okay.
Feeling,
right,
and so forth, that accompany all mental activities. So generally, when we talk about mind, we talk about primary mind, primary consciousness, and mental factors or secondary mental factors. The difference between them is there's part and parcel of the same conscious experience. When we differentiate mind or primary consciousness, it refers to the ability of consciousness to be aware of the mere perceptual field without making any distinctions. Within that conscious event, the ability to differentiate, let's say with the visual consciousness, for the consciousness to have the ability to differentiate between the colors of those prayer flags or the people, that is a mental factor or secondary mental factor called discrimination. Mm-hmm. That's present in any full conscious event, along with feeling, what do we call, sempa, intention, attention, and so forth. There are 5 other called the object ascertaining mental factors that are only present when you know something, which include prajna, wisdom, like when we talk about the prajna paramita, the perfection of wisdom. So prajna is a mental factor that's present even in our eye consciousness, although it doesn't ruminate, it doesn't think. The prajna that's present in our mental consciousness analyzes and so forth. Do you think prajna is always virtuous? Oh, I'm not sure. So you have to decide, was that yes or no? It was definitively one or the other. Is prajna always virtuous?
I don't think so.
No. We can use wisdom in a crafty way. We'll look at American, the business and people who cheat one another, criminals and so forth, politics and so forth. You can have great skill. Some people say, oh, it's brilliant, to mess up other people or to cheat other people. You can use wisdom to make bombs, to make better guns, weapons and so forth. So prajna covers both of them, but when we talk about the perfection of wisdom, we're talking about the virtuous prajna, first of all. Prajna has various conventional levels, also, like you're saying, understanding the lam rim, the conventional reality, the wisdom or prajna that is involved in developing bodhicitta, understanding the advantages of cherishing others as opposed to just selfishly cherishing oneself. I heard an interesting story of the daughter of some friends who used to always argue with the parents about everything. And blaming them if anything went wrong. You know, if the car crashed, oh, you gave me a crappy car. You know, that's the reason. You didn't give me such a bad car, I wouldn't have had this problem. And later, when it was pointed out to her that, you know, so other people don't have that same, you know, we don't always get on their case because they just say, if we point out that they made some mistake, they just say, oh, sorry. And this person's went, oh, wow. It's like some wisdom rose, some prajna rose, conventional understanding, sort of behavior kind of changed maybe quite quickly. So prajna does have those connotations, but when we talk about the perfection of wisdom, the prajna paramita, we're talking about a particular virtuous prajna, which is analyzing emptiness. It can be on the analytical level, still conceptually, that's still called prajna, and even in the direct perception of emptiness, that's called prajna. Okay? There is another word for wisdom called jnana, sort of related in the Indo-European language with our sort of, is it Greek? Gnosis, you know the word gnosis? Yeah, not noses. My teacher, Geshe Zopa, used to say, not noses, gnosis. Gnosis. It's also related with the word knowledge, the GN becoming K in some certain things, but that's related with this deeper kind of wisdom, which is used in Tibetan, we say Yeshe, like Lama Yeshe. Yeshe is this higher kind of wisdom. On the 10th bhumi, so the 6th bhumi, on the 6th level of the Bodhisattva path, after you've realized emptiness directly, the first bhumi you have a special practice of generosity, the second bhumi a special practice of ethics, morality, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, concentration. The 6th bhumi, special practice of wisdom, is called the prajna, special practice of the prajna paramita. 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, you have other perfections that you have a special practice of. On the 10th bhumi, you have a special practice in this gnosis, or exalted wisdom, it's sometimes called Tibetan Yeshe. And that is a mind that not only knows and understands well and analyzes the ultimate nature of phenomena, but simultaneously understands the conventional nature of phenomena. You might say, well, that should be way down there, conventional phenomena. This understanding of conventional phenomena has arisen because of understanding emptiness. Like we were talking about the post-meditation on post-meditative experience, when you arise from the meditation on emptiness and you have the illusion-like concentration. You see everything is like an illusion. You understand that. So after some time, you begin to understand how phenomena, you have a real understanding, not just having heard that phenomena are merely imputed. You really know that. That's called this gnosis, or the other wisdom. But they both have intellectual, conceptual versions and are present in a direct perception. They're not, one has to add the words direct realization rather than just saying prajna or jnana. You wouldn't tell just from that name which kind of wisdom it was. You have to specify a direct realization. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Good. Some questions.
Something that still confuses me is the relationship between a bodhisattva, an arhat, and a Buddha. Now, does a Buddha have the qualities of both a bodhisattva and the arhat? Does the bodhisattva just specialize in compassion and the arhat specializes in wisdom? You know, I'm just confused about that.
So there are two main vehicles that the Buddha taught. The well, we could say actually three, but we put the two together, the hearers and pratyeka Buddhas, solitary realizers, the hearer's vehicle, the Shravaka Yana, let's say. You could also call the pratyeka Buddha Yana, the path of the pratyeka Buddha Yana is the vehicle of them, and the Mahayana. So the goal of the Shravaka Yana and the pratyeka Buddha Yana is to become an arhat. The Tibetans make the etymology of that as a foe destroyer, having destroyed the foe of the afflictions, the klesha. Remember we were talking about the disturbing states of mind, starting from ignorance and all of its 84,000 different klesha. Their goal is to achieve the state of nirvana, upon which they are given the name, the title, arhat. They become an arhat. An arhat is someone who's achieved nirvana. But the mind has not completely reached its end point. From the philosophical teachings of the Theravada in the past, maybe nowadays they hedge their bets because they're more know about Mahayana, but from the classical point of view, that's the end point. Even Shakyamuni was an arhat, but he was a Buddha because he was different than the other arhats who might have only been practicing for 1, 3, or up to 16 lifetimes to achieve arhatship, nirvana. The Buddha had practiced the bodhisattva path. They recognize there is a bodhisattva path. They don't call it the Mahayana, they just say the bodhisattva path. In fact, they refer to the Buddha as the bodhisattva, as though there was only one. Because in their point of view, it's so rare for a person to prolong their own nirvana, to accumulate merit for 3 countless eons, because eventually you're going to become an arhat, and at the end of that time, your consciousness will be snuffed out. So that extra value that you provide to people becoming a Buddha, from their point of view, is just marginal. Most people are going to just, like if there's a fire, you want to get out for yourself. Like my corny joke that I tell, this old song, we got to get out of this place. You know, what was it? Who is it? What was it? The animals or something? Animals. Huh? So so the Shravaka Yana, Pratyeka Buddha Yana sense of fear and revulsion for cyclic existence is more like, I've got to get out of this place. The Mahayana, the Bodhisattva, is like, we've got to get out of this place. You're not going to get out just for yourself. So in doing so, practicing the Mahayana path, the path of the Bodhisattva, you could say the Bodhisattva Yana, the vehicle that brings you to enlightenment. In practicing that, you get to the same stage on the 7th bhumi. You completely eliminated all of the klesha, the delusions. But at that point, you also start to eliminate a finer level of obstructions in the mind that are called the obstructions to omniscience. The Pratyeka Buddhas, the Shravakas, the practitioners of the, let's say, the present Theravada, or what the Buddha called the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, they don't reach an omniscient state. They have great ability to see, clairvoyance to see the future, maybe a certain number of eons, and like eons, you know, for us to even know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now would be amazing, you know. And the past, they have clairvoyance of other people's minds to a certain degree in distant places. But even at the time of the Buddha, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, had greater clairvoyance, ability to see all time and space and so forth. From the Mahayana point of view, at a certain point when you start to eliminate these other obstructions, the special sauce, we'll talk special sauce all the time, right, in South Carolina, the special ingredient besides the wisdom of emptiness. So the Hinayana, their motivation is renunciation. Their special insight is wisdom of emptiness, like the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva also realizes emptiness, but their motivation is not just renunciation. Their motivation is bodhicitta, wanting to achieve omniscience, a greater state than arhatship, for the sake of all sentient beings. And in so doing, that motivation accumulates a vast amount of merit and has a special feature of almost as though if your how do you say, your perception, your aim, your sphere of interest includes all sentient beings. It's almost like the air upon which, the prana upon which your consciousness rides starts to expand to include others. I sometimes think of that because when we talk about the qualities of omniscience, we talk about the same kind of things that Christians do. Omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence, right? Do they add anything other than that in Christianity? Those are the three main things, right? The Godhead. God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Like you go into the church, you don't have to call God is there, although you might. You know what I'm saying? Well, one second, let me just finish this thought and then I'll get to Jeff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just let me finish this stuff first. Otherwise, I'll forget it for sure. And I already forgot what I was going to say. So the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva ideal, is aiming for that state of omniscience for the sake of others. And in doing so, because of their compassion and their sense of cherishing others more than themselves, like in the Jataka tales, giving away everything, even one's own body, even to the enemy, even to what to the worldly mind seems absurd things, with that aim of reaching the state where you could really benefit people, know every method to elevate them, how to go from the hell realm to the animal realm. They call it the knowledge of all paths. The Bodhisattvas learn not just how to take someone on the Lan Rim, but even how to train someone who's in hell to create karma to be born, in the animal realm or in the Preta realm and so forth. How to elevate anyone. That can only become, that wisdom, that knowledge, that understanding only is obtained by the omniscient mind. So it's likened sometimes, so from the Mahayana point of view, achieving nirvana is not an end goal. From what we consider to be the highest philosophical point of view, all of those individuals who achieve nirvana will eventually, and from Buddha's point of view, their minds are not ceased at the time of death. As sometimes in some of the Theravada teachings, some of the schools, let's say the Vaibhashika, the Hinayana schools, some of them say nirvana means snuffing out of the consciousness. You don't exist after that. Some of the Hinayana schools, however, say that's not the case at all. The consciousness continues. From a Mahayana point of view, that consciousness continues, and that mind is in a meditative equipoise. After leaving the body, is in a meditative equipoise on emptiness for eons. Completely content, no thought patterns. At a certain point, when the strength, the karma of those individuals begins to have used up for that single-pointed concentration, which they, at the time of death, they enter into nirvana. When that subsides, the Buddhas awaken them with their psychic powers and let them know that they haven't reached the final state of omniscience. There's still something to be done. And by this time, they can develop the wish, again, to take rebirth in the world, not uncontrollably like before, because they've eliminated all of the delusions, but by calling upon karma in their mind stream and praying that it ripen, they can be born in the world and again take rebirth, and this time develop bodhicitta and follow the bodhisattva path. Of course, they've already realized emptiness, but on the other hand, because of their strong imprint of self-cherishing, it may not be so easy to generate bodhicitta. But eventually all of them will follow the bodhisattva path and eventually become enlightened. So it likened sometimes to like out in the woods. I'm told, I think I've experienced this in Italy sometime. There was near the Institute of Lama Tsongkhapa, when I was walking through the fields, I knew that if if I crossed the river one place, if I kept on going, I'd have to cross another tributary, is that the right word? Or, you know, the stream was actually 2 times here. But if I walked over here, I just crossed once. So it said that the Bodhisattva path is like, even though it takes longer to get to this juncture over here, to get, you know, the Bodhisattva path takes much longer to accomplish, you cross the once. Whereas the follower of the Shravaka or Pratika Buddha who's aiming for nirvana, they reach nirvana, it's right here. Can you see, from the side? They reach here, but in that time, they're eons in that, and by the time they're ready to go back into the world to practice the Bodhisattva path, this person has already attained enlightenment. Even though this took much longer, this one got to nirvana much quicker. Can you get an idea? But this one got to enlightenment even after this one has been in this sort of blissful state of nirvana for eons and eons. Lama Yeshe used to say it's a little bit like if you were at a cocktail party or a pool party. What do you have in Raleigh? Maybe both. And you're kind of enjoying yourself, beautiful men and women and bathing suits and cocktails, and someone hands you a cell phone. It's your mother. And says, hello? Help, my apartment is burning, my house is burning, come please save me. And you're enjoying yourself so much and you say, later. Or would we say later gator or something like that? You're inebriated. So the sense of self-interest to achieve nirvana is likened to that. The Bodhisattva who's following the Bodhisattva path almost as though their breadth of interest includes all others, which leads to this, I think, karmic consequence of eventually of having the omnipresence. The wind. Omnipresence means that there is no place in the universe where the omniscient mind is not present. That means the wind, the prana upon which the omniscient mind rides, has spread throughout the universe because of opening your heart to others, along with this, not just wisdom, because the Hinayana practitioners also practice wisdom. So, arhat, someone who's reached this goal. Bodhisattva, generally along here, but even the Buddha is called a bodhisattva. All Buddhas, you could say, are bodhisattvas, but not all bodhisattvas are Buddhas because they haven't necessarily reached the state of omniscience. The practitioner here, we don't have, like here it's called a bodhisattva. Here they're called Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas practicing. When they reach here, they're called Shravaka Arhats or Pratika Buddha Arhats. When they again enter into the world, the Hinayana doesn't have a special name for them, and in the Mahayana they're called those who have previously achieved the fruit of the lesser vehicle and now have entered the greater vehicle, and eventually there's a long period here that they have to practice before they become Buddhas, but eventually from the Mahayana point of view, all of us will become Buddhas. Even those of you who think, I'm the one exception, I'm never going to be able to do this. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And let's give the guys a chance. Jeff has next dibs. Sorry.
Thank you for the teaching today.
Thank you.
I remember on Sunday when you were teaching, one of the things that you did quite often was compare Christianity to Buddhism, which is of some use and is also confusing sometimes. But as somebody who grew up in a fundamentalist Christian church, it helps me to compare the two, mainly because I see some of the archetypes that are, probably in the human mind, no matter what culture we're in, that sort of repeat. But that's sort of neither here or there. The specific thing
Where is it if it's not here or there?
it's in my mind somewhere.
It's kind of
probably.
empty, yeah? Right.
What
It's
I
not
mean
here,
by
it's not
that
there,
is-
therefore it must be empty of inherent existence.
What I mean by that is when we start talking about, you said omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, we speak about this characteristics of Buddhas, or in Buddhism we use terms similar to those.
Well, we use those terms exactly, and in Christianity we use those English words or
Yes.
Latin equivalents or whatever
Yes.
for the Godhead. So I like to say that not that much different when you think about the fundamental qualities. And some of the Catholic theologians that I've met, they say they feel very comfortable with calling God the omniscient mind.
Yes.
But anyway, go continue with your.
We're on the same page, and if we're talking about an omniscient mind that's omnipresent, that means it can see things everywhere, or it can be everywhere, or it
Right.
has some
It
knowledge
can be everywhere,
of everything
right, and it
all
has
over
all
the universe.
power. But from
in
a
time and
Buddhist
space.
perspective, all power doesn't mean it can just do what it wants. It means it has all power that's possible. So for instance, you might say, well, if the Buddha's so powerful, why doesn't he make me Buddha now? Give me the realizations.
Yes.
The Buddha says, a very famous verse in the Dharmapada that I referred to when we were talking about the Jataka tales, this short little snippets of knowledge from so many sutras that were put into the verse form. The Buddhas do not remove suffering like taking a thorn from your hand. The Buddhas do not purify negativities like bathing in the Ganges. That is to say, the Hindus believe that if you bathe in the Ganges River or you do your daily ablutions, that purifies sins. The Buddhas do not purify negativity sins by, with water. The Buddhas do not transmit realizations by hand. You might go to your guru and you say, or also we in evangelical, I think sometimes people, when the minister, the very special minister, charismatic, touches you, sometimes you shake, and as though the Holy Spirit enters you. The Buddhas do not transmit realizations by hand. They show the way. Like in the, we don't have the tanka here of the 12 links any longer, but at the bottom of the Wheel of Life tanka that I was going to talk about the other day, that we had to miss the class, there's a Buddha pointing up at the moon, which represents the third noble truth, true cessation, and the Buddha showing the way. That's kind of the visual hint of that. So the Buddhas don't have, it's not as though the Buddhas don't want to eliminate suffering. In fact, they show us how to eliminate suffering. They teach us the methods. When sometimes our minds are resistant to that and not ready. So actual Buddhas don't teach at that time those methods, how to do that. They teach something to elevate the mind, leave some imprints to get better and better. Whereas, and the Buddhas don't punish people for being bad. Implication in certain passages by some people in the Old Testament, at least, that God could become angry. Did they use that word? I think even, at least in English, the angry God, or the God of the Hebrews or something. Smite that village, everyone in that village, you should go and kill them. It's almost like the message of our nation, the Israel, Palestinians fighting, having grudges for generations and generations. From a Buddhist perspective, the Buddhas would never do that. They would never harm. Their aim is to bring people to enlightenment. Even if temporarily they might, like say the example we gave the other day, a father, a doctor who is a father, even to his loving son or daughter, might give some very unpleasant medicine, and the child is saying, "Oh, come on, don't you love me?" But or even do some operation that will give long-term relief but temporarily cause problem. So sometimes the Buddhas can bring about teachings and practices that bring some temporary hardship, keeping the precepts. Lama Zopa, giving me how many Vajrasattvas, Herb? 200,000 Vajrasattvas. Oh, Lama Zova. But that hardship is for your benefit, you know. It's not like punishing you because you've been bad. So there's a little bit difference there, but for many theologians, who with open mind, they can sort of address the possibility that maybe these two religious systems, when you take away the philosophical nitpicking, really talking about the same endpoint. However, as I mentioned in class the other day, if you went into a Christian home, little kids, and you asked them what they want to grow up, if someone said they wanted to be God, everyone would go, no, God is something different than us. You can't become God. But if you went into a Buddhist home, Tibet or China or something, and someone said, I want to become Buddha, and everyone would go, oh, good. Yeah, that's right. You can do that. Yeah. Follow-up. One follow-up.
Well,
I'm just showing.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree
That's
with
good.
everything you've said so far about this subject.
Okay.
So, if I'm a Christian, I do not aspire to be Jesus because that would be hubris or something.
Right. Well, Jesus is of a different
can't
mind
do that.
stream, so you couldn't be, even from a Buddhist perspective, I can't become Nargajuna.
Right.
I can't become Tsongkhapa, but I can become the endpoint Buddha.
Yes.
But in Christianity, generally, maybe you couldn't become
Right.
God.
And so, I mean, all I know about God is I'm not Him. That's the limit of
Right.
what I know about God. It's not me. That's about all I can say about it. So I'm not pretending to understand what omniscience or any of these things are like because I'm not that. So I'm just discussing this
Okay.
as a concept.
Okay, then.
Okay. One of the other things I hear from Christians is another concept called omnibenevolence, meaning God is great, God is good, God is all good. There is no bad there.
Right.
And I've always had trouble reconciling such a thing with what you said, you know, in the Old Testament,
Yeah.
he might order some king to go slay everybody
right.
and their animals and
So
their kids.
when
and
I've talked
everybody.
to, when I've
So
crossed,
it doesn't seem to match.
yeah,
However, if we get out of that paradigm and we go into a Buddhist paradigm, we could say, well, these people kill each other because karma or something else
right.
that doesn't have anything to do with me or doesn't have anything to do with a Buddha or a Bodhisattva or anybody telling them to do this or being involved in making them do this. It's just the nature of humanity itself and karma.
Yeah. Well, what I was referring to is the supposed words from the prophets that God had told them they had to kill the ram and offer the blood in the temple, and they had to kill that village, and these people were, you know, angry, and implications that God was angry and sent calamities and, you know, different
Yes,
things
I mean,
upon people. So that from omnibenevolence, I remember when I visited Egypt, I think the only time I visited Egypt was I was teaching in Beirut. I went across an Easter vacation. When you're a teacher, you have these big, long vacations, you know. And I went to Alexandria. I was going to Cairo, so the pyramids, the Valley of the Kings, and all that sort of stuff. Came back. And when I got to Alexandria, I stayed with a Catholic, I think he was a priest, I don't think he was a monk, who was a good friend of one of the Catholic teachers at the school I taught at in Beirut. So she said, look up Father so-and-so. And he worked for a Catholic organization called Caritas. I don't know if it still exists, care, love. And there was a poster in his office of a little girl in a field of sunflowers looking up in the sky, and it said, God is love. Yeah, not God is angry, not, you know. And all they did was omnibenevolence, you know. They helped the Palestinians, other people, well, not so many in Egypt, but in other poor people. And that was the first time I had a good feeling about Christianity since the time I was a little child and left the Presbyterian church at the end of my block because it was a long story. Why? I had sung a solo for Easter or something in the choir. I was probably about 10 or 12. And afterwards, the choir master asked me to go out to lunch with him. I ran back home 4 houses down, my mom and dad. My mom was in the hospital. My dad had said, so I came back, asked permission to go to lunch with the choir master. My dad said, no, I've put in a chicken pot pie. It's already cooked. I'm not going to waste it. I had to go back and, sobbing, tell the choir master I couldn't go with him. And afterwards, I didn't go so much to the church any longer. I like to say that sometimes big decisions like that, what religion you follow, can divert over a chicken pot pie. It was like a Swanson chicken pot pie that cost like 29 cents. But my father was a truck driver, and they used to get things that fell off the truck. So it was probably cost 10 cents, but he didn't want to waste that. So I'm not going to follow that any longer right now, because there's one last question before we get back. Otherwise, we won't finish the text if we only do questions.
I'll make this fast. When the arhats are in the blissful state of nirvana,
Yes.
do they accumulate karma, and do they exhaust karma?
They are probably exhausting virtuous karma, because that state of meditative equipoise on emptiness, that state that we call nirvana without remainder of the aggregates, that will eventually diminish the strength of that to such a degree that the Buddhas can awaken them. When they're really deep in that, the Buddhas don't awaken them, but they can awaken them with their psychic powers and remind them that they haven't eliminated all of the obstacles to their mind. They still have the obstacles to omniscience to do, and they enter back into the world. So they are in that state. It's just like the long life gods also. The long life gods is considered one of the unfree states when we talk about, we have a perfect human rebirth of leisure and endowment.
Right.
The leisure, one of the leisures is freedom from being born as a long life god, where you're not creating any virtuous karma, not thinking anything, but your virtuous karma store is going down, so to speak. So that long, maybe many eons, you're not creating any virtuous karma. You're not creating negative karma, but your store of virtue is going down.
Okay, I had never heard about the awakening part of what you said.
What
Where the
Oh, yeah,
omniscience
yeah.
needs to be developed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just let me continue on. Is that, Jeff? You feel enough satisfied? Okay. We'll have another chance if you have some other thing you wanted to follow up later. So, what page were we on here? 121. Thank you. So I won't go into more detail now on the 9-round breathing, refuge bodhicitta, or the other preliminaries, or on the Guru Yoga, other than to say that that's a very important thing, and if you can get your mind around that, to visualize your Guru on the crown of your head, just like in Vajrasattva, visualizing Vajrasattva. Here you visualize your Guru without any imperfections, maybe dressed as a monk, or if they're a layperson, dressed as a layperson. And at their heart, like Vajrasattva, there's a moon disk with their, here, instead of the Vajrasattva mantra, there's their name mantra. Om Guru Vajradhara, and then there's Sanskrit name, like Thubten Yeshe, my teacher Lama Yeshe, Thubten Yeshe, Muni Shasana Jnana. So Om Guru Vajradhara, Muni Shasana Dhara, Siddhi Hum. Siddhi means like to receive these realizations, to become a siddha. Siddhi. Hum means may you grant. And you imagine nectar comes down into you, the blessing of them, as you say that mantra, like the same thing in Vajrasattva. Follow? And then at the end of that, you imagine they diminish in size to about the size of your thumb, the end of your thumb, made of light. There's no pain. They come through the crown of your head. You shouldn't think, oh, it's not going to fit. It's just light comes down your central channel to your crown chakra, your throat chakra, to your heart chakra and absorbs into the subtlemost mind and wind at your heart chakra, and you feel great bliss. In a lot of the, I know that Gelik Rinpoche, the one great Lama who passed away a couple of years ago now, where was he? New York and Michigan and a couple of, some of you know who Gelik Rinpoche was? Anyone? No one ever heard of Gelik Rinpoche? Huh. Galupa, lay Lama. When he was a young boy, he was a monk, but he was from a noble family, and his father was recognized as a Rinpoche before him and so forth. So Gelik Rinpoche, when he was talking about one particular tantric practice, when he was talking about, people were saying, well, how do you get the, I can kind of understand when the guru, or when the practice you can meditate on emptiness with the clear light mind, but how can you simulate this blissful mind, which you're supposed to, the end point of the tantric practice, right? Remember, from the tantra point of view, Mahamudra means a union of the blissful gnosis, blissful exalted wisdom, that's realizing the clear light nature of the mind as emptiness. How do you get that bliss? And he said, oh, he just says this one little comment. He said, oh, that's when the guru absorbs into your heart. It's something you don't hear all the time, but that practice of guru devotion, when you have great faith, and I mentioned this morning, you might not have been here, Jeff, when in Christianity also, when people think, accept Christ into your heart. So like everything, you don't have to worry somehow, So at that point, if you've had experience in your own meditation on the freedom that you understand when you realize emptiness, there was never a me that created negative actions. There was never a me that felt the need to do that. That was some false assumption, almost like a dream. All of these things, unfulfilled ambitions and so forth, empty, that kind of relief. If you associate that also with the mind of the guru, who also, who's been guiding you so kindly, as they absorb into your heart and feel that bliss, that's what you start off with after the Guru Yoga. So on page 121, when it says, meditate on the profound path of Guru Yoga, and after making hundreds of fervent requests, it can be reciting their name mantra, or just as in the Lama Chopa, Kyoni Lama, Kyoni Yidam, this verse, you are the Guru, you are the Yidam, you are the Dakas and Dakinis, the protectors also. Other than you, from now until enlightenment, I will seek no other refuge than you, and so forth. That's also the sort of the stake, it's called the stake, making a very fervent request. They absorb into you, you feel that bliss. And so then at the bottom of the page, recognizing the conventional nature of the mind. Although we've been talking about the actual practice, this will reiterate that, but now we're getting to the part of the text that's talking about the actual practice. In that state where you are non-dual, or here it says indistinct from your guru, that means, you can't make a distinction between your mind and the guru. It's just unified. The guru is absorbed into you. So you have also that sense of confidence. In the state where you are indistinct from your guru, do not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations, and enter equipoise without the slightest distraction. You might say, well, what is equipoise? Equipoise just means keeping your mind on that alone without moving from that. When we say absorption, the Buddha was absorbed in the equipoise and the varieties of phenomena called profound illumination in the Heart Sutra. At the beginning, the Buddha is sitting there meditating. During the whole Heart Sutra, which some of you were here for the class the other night, the Buddha is sitting there the whole time and only arises from that at the very end, after Avalokiteshvara has instructed Shariputra about wisdom. At the end he says, well said, Avalokiteshvara, well said. The bodhisattvas who wish to train should practice just as you have said, and even the Buddhas will rejoice. That's all he says. That's all she wrote. What is that? That's something else. That's all he said. So that's considered a sutra. Everything that Shariputra asked and everything that Avalokiteshvara answered was inspired by the power of the Buddha. So that's considered a discourse of the Buddha. So the Buddha had entered the equipoise. That means a meditative absorption. Even though his omniscient mind, if we were to enter into an equipoise, our eye consciousness would have absorbed, our ear, nose, tongue, taste, as though only your mind is activated, like in these isolation, when you float in water, zero gravity things, no sound, they have insulation around, sensory deprivation. Here, you deprive the senses yourself. You by concentrating just on the mental consciousness, you don't have to consciously, as I suggested, imagine drawing the senses back like the limbs of a turtle. Automatically, it's done when you have good concentration. And so this is the state that one is trying to do. You try to just bring, like we're trying to emulate here, just meditate on the mental consciousness. Do not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations. So that means don't follow any thoughts that are unpleasant or pleasant. Expectations here is kind of inferring things that your mind might, oh, that'd be nice. Fears mean like, oh, I wish I didn't have that problem, worries and so forth. So let go of all conceptual thoughts, and the text will continue to explain different methods to do that. One method, as I said, is simply not to train yourself in not following them. Okay? If you don't follow the thoughts, you deprive them of their life energy, and they will begin to diminish. Even though they're kind of like in your peripheral vision, so to speak, of your mind, they're still there, but you're not following it, they begin to go down. If you follow them, you think, oh, keto chocolate. Who is that? What's your name again? Patty. Patty made keto chocolate for me. Oh man! But there's also, keto almond cookies. But that has a lot of carbohydrate, and that can cause insulin. Your mind begins. You go on a long trip, or he said this, he said that, and then he said that. You keep on following that thought, and you're going around, oh, I love a pizza, but best pizza is Chicago. Oh no, actually best pizza is in Italy. Oh, but Italy didn't invent the pizza. And then you're going from one, because you're entertaining that thought, right? You're following it. You're giving it some life energy. If you learn to withdraw your attention and just watching the substrate of mind rather than the contents of the mind, like at an aquarium. I gave this example before. At an do we have an aquarium in Raleigh? Big one? No? You have to, if you go sometime, if you're at a big wall of water, a big wall of glass, rather, behind which is water and there are fish swimming by, and you might say, maybe Herb says to me, hey George, look at the water, the nice clear water. And because the water is transparent, it's not easy to perceive. But I can infer the existence of water by noticing the fish move through it without any obstruction. It's just, and then defocusing on the fish, then I can kind of sense the medium through which they're moving. That's one strategy in taking your attention away from the thoughts, depriving them of their life energy, which is you're entertaining them, right? You get the idea how the word entertain is being used here? Like following them, giving them some interest. Do not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations, and enter equipoise without the slightest distraction. That takes time. That's sort of like the essence of the whole thing right there. But that takes time. You have to do it again and again without worrying that you're not getting anywhere. You're leaving an imprint in the mind every time you do that. Over time, the experience can be a little more authentic. It's not the cessation of mental activity as when you faint or fall asleep. So that's not the aim, just to, just like have a blank mind like Lama Zopa Rinpoche's cave in Laudo. He was called the Laudo Lama. The last life he was, regardless of whether you believe he was born after or before Lama Zopa, the Laudo Lama, or Lama Zopa was born before the Laudo Lama died, is considered to be emanation of Laudo Lama, who meditated in a cave. It's called Laudo, which Lao means turnip, and it's kind of the big rock that the cave is in is kind of shaped like a turnip. Anyone been to Laudo? You've been to Laudo? Anyone else? Someone else was here, and in the cave they used to store the radishes, so it was called Laudo, means stone or rock, so the radish rock. So in Laudo, I forgot why I was telling you this. Oh yeah, you say, oh, there's some goats in that cave sometime, chewing, no thoughts. I said, that's not, just having no thoughts doesn't mean that you're meditating on Mahamudra. Because the goats, otherwise the goats in the cave would be meditating on Mahamudra because they're not having any conceptual activity when they're just, So you shouldn't, or when you faint or fall asleep, you think there's no conceptual thoughts. That this is not what you're aiming for. This is an alert state where you have prajna, wisdom. You have to keep alert, and again recognize the quality that you're looking at. First, think about what you're looking for, the absence of any obstruction to thoughts, its ability to know, to cognize this. And then you don't have to ruminate anymore with those words. Once you've recognized that, the prajna no longer becomes verbal, when you're analyzing, and it's a wisdom consciousness that's just holding that. It's not like falling asleep. It's not like just having a blank state of mind. Like some people say, the aim of meditation is to have no thoughts. Have you heard that before? A lot of times people think that's from a Buddhist perspective, has missed the point. Begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness. And with alertness, make your mind attentive to any movement. Again, one sentence telling the process, long process we have to do. Begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? This is a very famous thing that's very popular now in the so-called, when people talk about the mindfulness movement, right, in medicine and everything, as though that's the main thing in Buddhism. Like that's, like the, what is it called? In Barre, Massachusetts, what is it called? The Insight Meditation Center. And mainly, nowadays they've branched into more things, but originally, just mindfulness, be mindful, which is very beneficial. Do you know what mindfulness is? Who knows the kind of definition? Before you go, Jack, what's mindfulness?
Mindfulness is paying attention to what you're thinking.
Mindfulness is a mental factor. It's one of the, what's called the object ascertaining factors, along with wisdom, not the omnipresent, which keeps in mind an object you have previously understood. So keeping in mind something. So it's not just being aware of what you're doing right now, but once you've noticed the clear light nature of the mind, you got a little glimpse of it, then holding it, keeping it in mind, being mindful of it. You're excused. I didn't want him to miss that, okay? So, famous example, the king says, bring this bowl of hot sesame oil to my wife, the queen. brimming with sesame oil. If you drop one drop, I'm having my soldier come with the sword, and he will cut off your head, or perfume for the queen. You know, one drop you spill. So even a cat runs by, you're mindful of this, right? You're just completely, because of the urgency, you know, you're gonna die. So you need to have that kind of sense to develop mindfulness. Well, maybe not that urgent, you're not gonna die, but you have to have that sense of mindfulness. So other things that might come up in the peripheral of your mind, in your so-called, you know, peripheral vision. You know what I mean by peripheral vision? You can see something, but you're not focusing on it. Those thoughts that are coming up that you might otherwise entertain, and in doing so, if you entertain those thoughts, your mindfulness of this, you're holding this in mind, becomes lessened, diminished, right? So you want to begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness. So that's the first, after recognizing, getting a glimpse of the clear light nature of the mind. That was in the first, on page 121. It's almost like the whole thing in 5 or 6 lines, but which was going to be elaborated more as we go along. First, to recognize the object that you're going to concentrate on, the clear light nature of the mind. Just get a glimpse of it. And then when you get a glimpse, practice keeping that in mind, with mindfulness, keeping it in mind without being distracted. You'll get distracted, of course, then you have to bring your mind back. Sometimes you have to even analyze again to tell yourself what that clear light mind, what you're looking for. It's a non-obstructive nature, the cognitive nature of the mind. It's illuminating like a lamp illuminates things. It's like a mirror, in that whatever you place before a mirror, without effort, arises as a reflection in the mirror, right? It's not like you put this up and then the mirror has to do something in order to, it's immediately there. The clear light nature of the mind, whatever aspect appears to the mind arises in that aspect. So these are all ways of understanding that clear light nature. You might have to verbalize them to yourselves. Once you've got a sense of that, you just hold it with mindfulness. Eventually, you try to hold it single-pointedly, with single-pointed concentration. Mindfulness is one of the factors that allows you to develop single-pointed concentration. That's why the Buddha extolled mindfulness. Mindfulness is not the end state. It's one of the essential stages along the path that brings that to fruition. By keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness and with alertness. So here's the second thing. Again, sounds like you might even skip over that sentence, just sounds like the same thing. What's the difference between mindfulness and alertness, if there is any? Do you know, what was your name again? Yeah. Bill? Yes. Yeah, Bill. Do you know, have you heard, you studied Buddhism for a while? All your life? Not all my life. No, okay. But have you heard of mindfulness, right?
Alertness is very different from mindfulness. Alertness is to keeping watch.
Okay. We're going to immortalize your answer here for YouTube.
I think mindfulness, I should say, is keeping track of the past experience that you have learned. Alertness is to keeping watch of what's going on from moment to moment.
Right. So alertness is sometimes he wants to hand it back to you, but he may want to answer another thing, so keep it there. Alertness is like a spy. A certain amount of your mental energy is watching the general object, the clear light nature of the mind. Part of your attention also, like a little spy, watching whether the mind has, other thoughts are beginning to distract you, just noting that. And if you notice that your main attention is beginning to drift off to that, so that your mindfulness will diminish, you have to apply some remedy to that. So the spy is like, it's got a on my Apple Watch, I have a little walkie-talkie, you know, calling to Dave, you know, watch your mind, you know, it's obstacles coming. The alertness recognizes that. It's a very special mental factor. Later, along the path to develop single-pointed concentration, when your mind has been trained, and these distracting thoughts no longer arise, or even if randomly something arises, your mind has become so trained to keep one thing in mind with mindfulness that you no longer are bothered by that. You even let go of alertness. At a certain point, you have to develop another state of mind called equilibrium, a mental factor called equilibrium, where you let go of that because that little bit of mental energy you've invested in the mental spy could be invested in your concentration. And until you let go of that and invest all your energy on the object, you can't develop the single-pointed concentration. But at the beginning, don't have to worry about giving it up now. Yeah? You have to use that. If you have a very good experience, you might, in your Mahamudra meditation, you've kept keeping the object in mind. You no longer have to, for a certain period of time, you don't have to use any logical reminder of what this clear light is. You've got a sense of it, let go of that. But still, you need that alertness to notice if your mind is being distracted to something else, or if your mind is beginning to sink. Do you know what that means, sink? Sinking is pretty good. It doesn't mean sleep. Those sleep and drowsiness are kind of the gross manifestations of this. But it's two ways that we can lose the object that we're concentrating on, right? What are they, Herb?
One of them is excitation, and the other one is torpor, they call it.
Yeah, sinking, torpor. Torpor is kind of like first stage of that. So it's one way you can lose the object is, you know, something else is here, and then this. The object is sometimes even forgotten, or is not being held well because you're multitasking. You know, you're thinking what's on sale at Costco, and you know, whatever. Or I am. I wanted to get a good Sutuku knife, and I was keep on thinking that. Or and Don took some blood tests the other day. Robbie gave me the results. All of the allergens, the things I might be allergic to. One I'm allergic to is cockroach. I don't know what they injected in me to see that I'm allergic to cockroach. I asked Robbie. He said most people are allergic to that. And one of the other things was mites and something dust pollen or something. He said most people are allergic to that, so I want to get a new pillow. So I'm multitasking. Does Costco have any good anti-allergic pillows on sale? You don't want to do that. That's called excitement. So the two ways that you can lose the object by wandering. One is just general wandering or scattering. But the particular one that's most problematic is when you wander onto something attractive. That particular kind of wandering or scattering is called excitement. You know, like think of, you know, Richard Gere, or you know,
Wait a minute.
Alex Wayman. No. Oh, wait. Okay.
Is that working?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. When we're training for Shine, you're using an object, pretty much a deity, as a general rule.
Yeah, but here we're not using the deity.
Here
we're using the clear light nature of the mind. Yeah, but you can use a deity.
If you were using the deity, that's pretty straightforward. But if you're talking about clear light nature of the mind, becomes up to you to decide what that is. So how does one develop a good realization, if you like, of the clear light nature of the mind? That's the question.
Yeah, so the first paragraph said, sort of like, in just a few words, the whole thing. Later it's going to elaborate. So in that state where you are indistinct from your guru, so just the guru is absorbed, do not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations. So that means train yourself not to follow the thoughts. This is how you're beginning to observe the clear light nature of the mind. Without following the thoughts, they begin to diminish, and it's just like in a room where there's a lot of mosquitoes or flies, if there's a screen that occasionally goes through the room, pulls them all out, and there's the summit missed because the screen was not very small, again and again. Finally, you're left, and you're no longer focused on what was sort of irritating buzzing of the mosquitoes and flies. You're just left in clear. So like that, when you don't entertain attractive thoughts or thoughts that bring some irritation or fear to the mind, naturally, as you don't entertain them, that is to give them energy, they will begin to diminish in their intensity. And even if they come back again, the frequency will be less. The more you think about them, the more often they'll come and the longer they'll stay. So if you learn to withdraw your attention away from them, but not just that at all, not just have blank mind, but with a particular wisdom that recognizes what's resulting is, this is the clear light nature of my mind. It is unobstructing. The thoughts can come, emerge from the clear light nature. They can dissolve back into it. You might verbalize that to yourself and then just try to focus on that, what you're experiencing. Is that how it is? It is cognitive. This mind, this clear light mind, knows the objects that arise in it, and the part of the mind that's watching the rest is cognizing that nature. Because when you're watching the clear light nature of the mind, what you're watching is clear light nature of the mind, not the function of knowing, but the little part of the mind that's watching that is knowing. That's how you know that that the consciousness has the knowing factor. There's two things. That consciousness is that which is clear and knowing. So clarity here is its nature. Knowing is kind of its function. So those are the two things you're focusing on. Letting go again and again. That's sort of, just the whole thing is right there. But to know how to do that, we have more, and then you have to do it in practice. So begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness, and with alertness, make your mind attentive to any movement. That means when the mind begins to either sink. Oh, I didn't finish talking about sinking. So sinking means due to excitement, you lose the object because your attention goes to something else. And you're either multitasking and this is not held well, or you lose this completely. You might think for 20 minutes you've been thinking about groceries or your trip to India or something, and then you realize you were supposed to be meditating on the mind. So you go back. The other way that you can lose the object is through sinking. When you're holding the mind, you've got it, but you're not holding it really well. Like at night, have you ever watched TV late at night with a remote? At a certain point, the remote falls out of your hand. I know someone that resonated with. Bill. Is it Bill? Yeah.
You want to hold it not too tight and not too loose. I think
You have to have the Goldilocks touch, right?
Yeah, when I try to hold my mind at the stage, try to hold it not too tight and not too loose. Because when you hold it too tight, you can, just like you hold an animal too tight, you can kill it.
Yeah.
You don't hold it too loose, it will go away.
So that's crucial, but it's coming. If you hold too tight, you create agitation and it creates excitement. If you let it too loose, you can generate sinking. So the looseness means you're not holding it with enough, tension, if you want, that you can keep it. Like you just lost it completely. It's like I remember sometimes you saying mantras late at night and it just, So that is the fault of sinking. When you lose your good grip on the object, even though you think you've got it, just not applying enough tension in the mind, and the tension doesn't mean, it's not reflected with body. You don't have to think, that's not tension. Here, tightening means tightening the concentration. Like say if there's distractions, you're trying to do some important email or you do your taxes, you have to concentrate. Yeah.
One analogy, teacher has, I'm sorry. One analogy for what we're talking about that one of my teachers taught me was thinking about holding water in my hand. If I hold it too tightly and try to squeeze it to hold on to the water, it squirts out from between my fingers and goes somewhere else. And if I don't, sort of cup my palm in a concave manner at all, and I just hold it flat out like that, trying to hold the water, and I don't really try to hold on to it at all, it just runs off my palm onto the floor.
You're getting the same.
So either way, I screwed it up.
Yeah.
But it's a function of did I try too hard or did I not try at
So
all? I've got to do it somewhere in the middle.
Right. So we haven't even gotten to that point yet. We're just, that's coming up because of Bill's observation. Here we're just saying, begin keeping watch with undistracted mindfulness and with alertness, make your mind attentive to any movement. The movements means distractions, when your excitement is present, and when sinking is present. When you notice that with alertness, you're not holding it right tight enough, or you're letting you're too tight on the object, and your excitement is coming up, and then you have to apply a remedy to that to get your mind back into the right state. We'll talk about these in a second. Tighten by making taut, and look nakedly at the nature of that which is clear and knowing. So it doesn't mean tighten your body. It's talking about a squeezing attention. When you're just a little too loose, you're going to tighten your attention. Like when you withdraw your attention away from your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, body consciousness, just a mental consciousness. And then even within that, not letting it get distracted to other things, not letting it just sink into apprehension, but holding that object tightly. Tighten by making taut. These are mere words. The only way that you can understand what that means, well, there are analogies that can help you understand, like the analogies you're giving, but the only way that you can really understand that is to do it yourself. Like I said, the Buddha, in the Tanka of the 12 links, if you go out in the break, the Buddha is standing with his hand toward the moon, the true cessation. He can't give you true cessation and ending of your problems. He just shows you how to do it, and then you have to do it yourself. Right? You understand? Tighten by making taut, and look nakedly at the nature of that which is clear and knowing. Look nakedly. Does that mean you take off your clothes during the meditation session? No. It's talking about the quality of the mind without no, don't take off your clothes. She's just checking. So naked, when we're talking about naked or bare awareness, it means an awareness which is no longer ruminating. We were just talking about it's like this, it's like that. You use some analysis to get a clear idea of what you're looking for, and then when you've got a sense of that, just hold it without any other conceptual elaboration. Can I put it that way? Just barely. It doesn't mean like barely hold, like not completely holding. It means hold with a bare awareness without conceptualizing. Recognize any conceptual thoughts that arise. Recognize when, like in the spaciousness, some conceptual thought thing arises. It might be a deluded state, like irritation or anger. It might be a state of pride, oh, I got it. Or it might be some conceptual thought, this is clear light, or whatever. Recognize, or there might be some random thought due to karma, or it's hot in the room. Oh, I remember when I did a long retreat at Kopan many, many years ago. I tried my best to fill up every hole it was called the Chenrezi Gompa. I don't think it exists any longer, the old one. There were many holes where the mosquitoes would get in, the flies would get in, and I was very very sensitive, had to make the best attempt to keep everything out. So I remember one meditation session, I was meditating on Tara, I think, and there was this fly who came and walking around and very, irritating. And then I used an antidote to that, which you might find useful. I thought, why is this particular fly here now? Maybe this is my mother from this life. My mom had died some years before that. This could be my mother. Certainly was my mother some life, but it could be my mom. And then at that point I said, oh yeah, stay there. There's some better stuff here. For that fly to be anywhere was, instead of being irritating, it was pleasant. I don't know if that, you might riff on that. If you know what I mean. You might see if that resonates with you somehow and apply that in your own way, your own jazz to that. Tighten by making taut and look nakedly at the nature of that which is clear and knowing. Recognize any conceptual thoughts that arise. So the recognition means that's just a conceptual thought. You can let it go. You don't have to entertain it. Moreover, like a swordsman, or say swordswoman also, like a swordsman in a duel, exert yourself in cutting off whatever conceptual thoughts arise. So this is actually referring to not just to two people sword fighting. This is referring to this analogy in the scriptures. The two people, there's one person with a bow and arrow, shooting arrows at the other person who has a sword, and the person with the sword has to, as the arrows are coming, he has to knock them off before they come. So he's very, very good, but even the slightest distraction, because the other guy's shooting the arrows one and after, just the slightest distraction, you're gone, right? I told you the story of the Italian telecom commercial, right? I just quickly say, this guy is about to be shot by the French Foreign Legion. He's got his last wish. You know how you get one wish before you're about shot? Instead of a cigarette, he says, I want to call Mama. So he's talking to Mama. He says, Mama, without this phone, I'd be dead. Literally. Without this phone, they're going to shoot him. So if you lose your concentration, even for a moment, your mindfulness, you've lost. And for that moment, you've lost the battle with keeping this because your mind gets distracted. So you have to be like that swordsman who is cutting away the arrows. But that can be, that's at a later stage. As Geshe Repton says, if you have a chance to read these three books, any parts of them, and Geshe mentions in here, you have to start, first of all, gently with the mind. If you try to be too much tension, like every thought that's coming, you've got to avert it as soon as it comes. This conceptual thought, let it go, push it away. That can cause a lot of tension and even can cause some mental distress, what we call lung, sort of like tension in the heart. So that's a little more, that's once your mind has become adept at watching this, and then a thought comes, you recognize that you can't follow that, like the swordsman. It's like an arrow coming toward you. Keep that away. Don't follow that. It's not as though you can push the thought away, but understand not to follow it and to consciously, as though exclude it from your attention. That's kind of like the sword pushing it apart. Make sense? But you don't have to do that from the beginning. You need to have, first of all, just calmly recognize the clear light nature by not following the thoughts in general, trying to see, even at the beginning, just to see, sitting a long period of time, even your mind is engaged in a lot of thoughts, just waiting for a moment when it's calm, and then hold that. You're very gentle. Get to know that. And then when you hold that with mindfulness, later, when your mind is elevated, that is more practiced, then you can apply this like the swordsman diverting the arrows as soon as the thing arises. Are you familiar with the prayer we call the 8 verses of training the mind? Mm-hmm. Some of you are. there's one verse, you probably have memorized a different translation. I have my own translation. When afflictions arise, endangering myself and others, I will confront and avert them without delay. Maybe how do you say it?
I don't have it memorized, but
Oh, you don't have
it's very similar.
Okay. So what that means is confront and avert. The Lama Zopa, when he gives commentary, sometimes like at the gate, the king's chamber or the queen's chamber, there are guards outside with swords, to keep people out. Bad, he doesn't want to enter. So when some suspicious-looking person comes up, first they have the spears out, they confront the enemy. Immediately they're applying an antidote, and not just being alert and actually avert them. That means you apply the antidote. Confront means that with alertness, you've noticed them, the presence of the distracting thoughts, and confront them means you apply the antidote to get rid of them. If it's an angry thought, meditate on love, for instance. If it's a thought of attachment, meditate on the repulsive nature of the body. You might not know what I mean. You think, what is he talking about, the repulsive? Meditate on the shortcomings of samsara. You have to apply the antidotes to avert those thoughts so that your mind, again, is not confronted with these. So it's a similar kind of thing here. That's a practice that we do in a general way. We try to practice when we're in the mind training. Moreover, like a swordsman in a duel, exert yourself in cutting off whatever conceptual thoughts arise. Having finished cutting them off, don't keep on fighting. Rest your mind, and without losing mindfulness, loosen by relaxing. This is what Bill was referring to before. Loosen by relaxing. Very famous line that comes in, I think, one of the volumes, the core volumes of Saraha. As it is said, tighten by making taut, loosen by relaxing, and there is where you place your mind. So two things. Tighten by making taut, loosen, what does it say? Loosen by what? By relaxing. You might say, oh, this is contradictory. It's like, the example is that like tuning a stringed instrument. Now, I'm told by people with string instrument, they don't agree with this analogy, but it's said that to tune an instrument, a stringed instrument, you have to change the tension, right? That's a little too tight, that's a little too loose, tightening. So it's a little bit like that. You have to find in your own experience, here and in Shine in general, you have to find the right tension of the mind. Too tight, you generate excitement. Too loose, you give rise to sinking. So you have to experiment. So tighten by making taut. When it's too loose, you tighten. Then you notice it's a little too tight because the mind is a little tense, you can't concentrate, the excitement generates. Loosen the mind. So it's like tuning, in theory, someone who's tuning an instrument, after some time in the coffee house, they got the right thing, right? They don't do the whole evening tuning their guitar, right? Have you ever been, I'm sorry, long time, well, come on, play. Just they keep on tuning their thing. So in theory, at a certain point, you reach some equilibrium, tighten by making tight, loosen by loosen, and there is where you place your mind, in that tuned place between too tight and too loose. That's where you equipoise. So this means you still have the same object that you're thinking about, the clear light nature. Now we're talking about how you're apprehending it in your meditative session, okay? Not too tight, not too loose, just right. Is it Goldilocks or what? Was it Goldilocks or Little Red Riding Hood? Goldilocks. Yeah. Not too hot, not too cold. And so, as it is said, this is a quotation, I believe, from one of Saraha's 3 core volumes. And when mind bound in a tangle is relaxed, without doubt, it frees itself. So another enigmatic, if you just read those two things, they say, well, how could that be? Tightened by making thought, loosened by loosing, and there's where you place your mind. It's like, you need to have some understanding of what that means. When the mind is bound in a tangle, when mind bound in a tangle is relaxed, without doubt, it frees itself. So what does that mean? Pardon?
It's like a knot.
Yeah, tangle, yeah, kind of like a knot. So when you're getting, it's like, oh, what am I doing? Just relax. Just go back into a non-conceptual state, relax. We'll see more about what these two things mean in the future here. I'm going to go another 10 minutes, is okay? And then we'll take a break. Actually, what time do we end? 4:30? Okay, we got a little. In accordance with these statements, relax without becoming distracted. So two things. Relaxing relaxing the mind in general so there's not tension, which causes distraction. As you look at the nature of whatever conceptual thoughts arise, they disappear on their own and a vacuity dawns. Again, very brief, this is the root text. Very brief, what does that mean? When you look at the nature of whatever conceptual thoughts arise, they disappear on their own and vacuity dawns. So what's the nature of the conceptual thoughts? They themselves, although they seem to be distinct from the clear light nature of the mind, they themselves are of that same entity of the mind. They are clear light also. So just recognize, some distracting thought comes, just recognizing it sort of metaphorically or whatever, as though they were in your peripheral vision, just without addressing them completely, just realizing that they are the nature of the mind, that they could not be there unless the mind had this clear light nature. They will dissipate. How does it say here? As you look at the nature of whatever conceptual thoughts arise, they disappear on their own and a vacuity dawns. So you can think of either asking yourself, using analysis, that could only be there if the mind within which they're arising was non-obstructing, and the fact that I'm knowing them, that the mind was cognizing, and just turn your attention back on that, either the cognizing factor of the mind, like who is knowing this, like turning your mind away from the objective thought to the subjective mind, or even where it right is, the mind itself at that very place is of clear light nature. And rather than focusing on the objective thought, focus on the spaciousness of the mind within which it's arising. And in so doing, again, not feeding, not entertaining the thought, they disappear on their own and vacuity dawns. It's not as though you have to push the thought somewhere else, push it off to the side, like I'm going to deal with that later, keeping it off so that, the mind is clear. That's just going to cause tension. That's not the way to get rid of the thoughts. You have to let them disappear on their own through these, focusing on either the clear light nature or the cognitive nature of the mind. Make some sense? Yes. Okay?
Like a cloud in the sky, there can't be a cloud without a sky for it to be in.
Yes. And like this, the example is given, like on a spring day, on a sunny spring day, some clouds there, the light of the sun falling on that, it's like the wisdom, sun like the wisdom that's analyzing this, can cause the, condensation is the right word, cause the condensation to evaporate, and you're left, it's not as though the cloud went to east or west. I mean, sometimes the wind blows the clouds away, but just on a sunny day, that cloud can sort of disappear. It didn't go anywhere. it dissolved back into the sky. In terms of here, it's talking about the molecules separated, no longer condensed. You no longer see that. But an analogy to here, with the wisdom, you're no longer feeding that thought. The thought doesn't go anywhere. You have to push it somewhere. It just dissolves back into the clear light nature of your mind. Eventually, if you have karmic instinct for that, it will emerge again. There'll be another cloud. Sometime, maybe you get bitten on your ankle or something by a flea or something, and suddenly it brings up some memory of something else. Oh, I got Lyme disease. Is that a Lyme? All sorts of conceptual thoughts come. So other clouds can emerge from the clear light nature of your mind, even if you've been in a quiet state by some external circumstances. Someone starts buzzsawing their hedge right next to you when you're doing your retreat, and I thought he told him not to, or the leaf blowers. That's the big thing right now, isn't it? These very loud leaf blowers. So you have to be prepared when you're doing retreat to encounter some kind of obstacles like that. Sometimes there may be some temporary period when it's really difficult, but just to be patient with that. And there's some other methods to do with that also. But let me continue just a little bit longer. As you look at the nature of whatever conceptual thoughts arise, they disappear on their own and a vacuity dawns. So that means the clear light nature of the mind, our understanding of it. This is just a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind, because as yet we haven't a direct, bare, or naked perception of that. Not a direct perception of the clear light nature of the mind. We're building up a factually concordant mental image, which is good enough. Lama Yeshe used to say, "Good enough, dear." And people would come and say, "Oh, Lama, I can't do all these." And I would say, "Good enough, dear." I thought it was very touching all the time. Pardon? I have the T-shirt. You have the T-shirt, "Good enough, dear"? Does it say that? Yeah, really? I didn't know that. That's good. Similarly, if you investigate when the mind is still, a non-obstructing and empty clarity is vivid. So we've quieted these other thoughts. There's a period, even at the beginning, some little quiet time between the thoughts. If you investigate that, if you just observe that with some analysis, some wisdom, a non-obstructing and empty clarity is vivid. Non-obstructing is one thing to keep in mind. It's the similarity with emptiness. It's not emptiness. It's just here it means a non-obstruction of thoughts. Thoughts can come and go. The mind is formless, so it itself is empty of any obstructive contact. And certainly the thoughts that arise within it and emerge back into and dissolve back into it are not prevented from doing so. You can get rid of your unhappiness. I mentioned before, when I was unhappy, one Tibetan Lama told me in England, he said, "Don't need unhappy mind." Kind of broken English, right? Don't need unhappy mind. We, by following that unhappy mind, I wasn't invited to the party, and everyone else is there, they don't like me, and they've never liked me, and they never will like me. That's like going like, instead of that, thinking, "Oh, I'm here alone. I can meditate. I don't have to please anyone else at the party and get drunk and, do something I'm going to regret tomorrow, probably," right? Similarly, if you investigate when the mind is still, a non-obstructing and empty clarity is vivid. It is called seeing, quote, "seeing the stillness and movement are integrated." Seeing that stillness and movement are integrated. What does that mean? Recognize as movement of the mind whatever conceptual thoughts are generated, and without blocking them, not that, focus on their nature. When the thoughts come, either focus on the clear light nature within which they're arising, rather than the objective thought, the substrate of mind within which they're arising, the clarity, or on the cognitive nature of the mind that's knowing them. It's almost like taking your attention away from it in another way by turning your attention to the subject mind. What's knowing it? That clarity, that knowing factor of the mind, which is of the same entity of clarity. They're the two things. The clarity is the nature of the mind, clear-light nature. The cognitive ability, the knowing, is its function. They're of one entity, but they're conceptually different. So focus your attention on the knowing. What is knowing this thought? And as you do that, it's just like if I'm looking at, was it Adriana? I forget. Adriana. Looking at Adriana instead, like, can you see my eyes kind of defocusing, focusing instead on the subject mind that's subject, say, eye consciousness that was a moment ago perceiving her. Focus on the subject mind rather than the objective thought. So all of this, in the root text, all of this, it's suitable for a meditator to read, because once you've received a commentary and you've investigated in your own, this brings to mind the whole thing in just a few words. You might think that, oh, this doesn't give enough information. Indeed, if you don't know, it doesn't give enough information. You need a commentary. That's why the Panchen Lama wrote his auto-commentary. Without blocking them, focus on their nature, whatever conceptual thoughts are generated. This is called seeing that stillness and movement are integrated. So even when the objects appear in your mind, you can use that to revivify your understanding of the clear light nature. Like the story I told you of dear Piero, the monk. He's no longer a monk, but he was a monk when we were at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa. So he was the disciplinarian at one course when Lama was teaching the 6 yogas of Naropa. It's kind of like tantric Mahamudra. And during the course, we were down in Lama's room, and Lama was asking Piero, how is your meditation on the clear light nature of the mind? And Piero said, Lama, so many problems, the monks are doing this, they're arguing, I can't, it's like airplanes fighting in my mind. And Lama looked at him and said, that's the best time to meditate on the clear light. Like this, movement of the mind, it's like all of these things. At that moment, you can just let go and recognize the clarity of they couldn't be there unless the mind had clear light nature. Just let go of them. As you defocus, the sort of like the jet planes are sort of becoming more insubstantial. You're not focusing on them and worrying about them. You're not addressing them. You're not entertaining them. Focus on also the cognitive nature, the mind that's perceiving that. So even though you might think it's a bad time to meditate, I can't meditate now, I've got too many problems. That's the best time. At that moment, let go. Make sense? This is similar to the example, or an example, you don't know this example maybe. This is similar to the example of the bird that flies from a boat. You say, what is this talking about? As it is said, like the crow that flies off a boat, and after circling around, it lands on it again. Again, although this is not separated in this text like these are, this is also a quote from, I think, from Saraha, one of Saraha's or other volumes on the Mahamudra. So what does that mean? In ancient times, I don't know if we still do, ancient times ship at sea has certain birds that it keeps, and when you're not sure, maybe there's clouds, you're not sure if the clouds are condensing over an island, if you're near land, so you open up the cage, let the birds go out, and they're flying around the ship, they go further and further, and if they sense land, because they're way up there, right? And they're circling away from the ship, they can see much further. If they don't see land, which they would go to, they're fed up with the boat and the cage, right? If there was land, they'd go there. So if after some time they come back, there's no land there. So the same thing with thoughts, your own thoughts. You have pizza, in Italy is really good pizza, but Carzone is good, but Stromboni is even better. Venerable had Stromboni at Vix the other day, right? Oh, she's really single point of concentration. Yeah. Stromboni is even better than Kazon, but then your mind is like the bird flying out. But after some period of time, there's no other place it can go. It comes back to the clear light nature of your mind, like coming back to the ship. Started from the ship, some thought, rumination, all of these different things. Finally comes back to the clear light nature. So that sometimes you can do too. Again, without getting involved, without worrying. So some train of thought is going on in your mind, and maybe because of trying to prevent it, you're getting too much tension. Just let it go. Just observe it without feeding it. But it may have its own inertia, kind of like the bird. After some period of time, it will play out, and again, you'll be quiet. So this is in a sense, this, what is that called? A simile or a metaphor? A simile, I guess, right? Like the bird, example of the bird. Should we take a break? Okay, what, half hour? Or say, no, 15 minutes? 15 minutes. It's 3:20, it's 3:22 and a half, 2:23, so what? Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. If you come back. flea-infected dog nipping at your heels in a future life. And just, I hope there's some imprint in your mind that instead of kicking me away, you'll say, oh, poverino, omani pemihun, before you walk on. So to remind ourselves of impermanence, that any kind of impermanence, or like when you give a lecture, so pride does not have as much footing to rise, to remind yourself this is an impermanent situation. Remind yourself that everything you're talking about you learned from others, your teachers, even if it's a worldly subject. Okay, so are we okay? Any pressing thing you need to ask? Susie excluded? No, I'm just teasing. Just teasing. Just teasing. Oh yes, we're going to, to help to eliminate obstacles to the coming light of the path course, Lama Thubten Yeshe has asked the centers, or I'm not sure if it's just this center, but in general, 100,000 recitations of the 20 praises of 21 Taras. So Donna is going to lead us in one recitation right now. Don't worry, not 21,000. Not 100,000 right now. I remember when we were studying mind and mental factors in India with Geshe Darge at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. Geshe said, there are 84,000 delusions. The first one is, ignorance, and I heard, and John Lando said, and then Geshe said, the second one is attachment, third one is this or that, and then he said, all the rest can be included in these three root delusions. There was kind of a sigh in the room. Wow, I was afraid it was going to go through all 84,000 right now. So Donna's going to lead us in one recitation and then 7 recitations of the short prayer, which is where, Donna? Which page is that?
I believe it immediately follows.
Immediately follows?
Yes, it's immediately following the long version on page 198.
On page 198. So you might put your, is that, yeah, so that'll be, just turn the page over. So that is the one when Atisha was very sick and he had some problems, and Tara said the only way he could eliminate this was by reciting either 10,000 or 100,000 praises of the 21 Taras, praises to her various varieties. And Atisha said, I'm old, In terms of guru devotion, sometimes you can tell your guru you can't do what they're asking you. And the Tara said, okay, don't worry. Recite this 5 lines. Is it 5 lines, right?
Yes.
10,000 or 100,000 times. That will suffice. So that's been enshrined as having the same power as the 21 Taras. So even though we're not saying the long 21 praises, we'll say that once, then we say this 7 times. Oftentimes when you say, like say if you say the long Dharani of Avalokiteshvara, some of you don't know that. I guess I asked some people today, they didn't know. Do you know the long Chenrezi mantra or Dharani? Do you know? Namo Ratnatrayaya, Nama Ayagana Sagara Vairochana Viharaja. So it's almost like 100 syllables. Do you know, Bill? Anyone know? I'm surprised. Okay. So anyway, it has parts like the Medicine Buddha mantra. There's a part that the last part of it, after you've recited the long mantra 21 times, you can say just the end part. Keep on saying that. Collect several malas of that. Om dara dara diri duri duri diri iti vadijana. Or like in the Medicine Buddha mantra, the long one has some prelude to it. Namo Bhagavate Bhashanja Guru Vadaya Brahmarajaya Tathagadaya Arate Samyak Samadaya Hadita Om Bhashanja Bhashanja Ma Bhashanja Bhashanja Rajasa. That part you can just, after you say the long one a couple of times or 21 times, then you can continue saying that last part. So you kind of think of that similar here. Say the long one, long 21 praises. Although this is not included in the 21 praises, it's kind of like a similar kind of energy can continue on that. So without more ado.
Okay, starting on page 191. From your sublime abode at the Potala, O Tara, born from the green letter Tom, your crown adorned with Amitabha, Action Mother of the Buddhas of the Three Times, Tara, please come with your attendants. The gods and demigods bow to your lotus feet, O Tara. You who rescue all who are destitute, to you, Mother Tara, I pay homage. O my prostrate to the noble transcendent liberator, homage Tara, swift heroic, eyes like lightning instantaneous, sprung from opening stamens of the Lord of Three Worlds, tear-born lotus. Homage she whose face combines 100 autumn moons at fullest, blazing with light rays resplendent as 1,000-star collection. Homage golden blue one lotus, water-born in hand adorned, giving effort calm austerities, patience meditation her sphere. Homage crown of Tathagatas, actions triumph without limit, relied on by conquerors' children, having reached every perfection. Homage filling with Tutare, whom desire direction and space, trampling with her feet the seven worlds, able to draw forth all beings. Homage worshipped by the all-Lord, Chakra, Agni, Brahma, Marut, honored by the host of spirits, corpse chasers, Gandharvas, Yakshas.
Homage with their
Tray and pace sounds, destroying foes' magic diagrams, her feet pressing left out right in, blazing in a raging fireplace. Homage Turi, very dreadful, destroyer of Mars champions, she with frowning lotus visage, who is slayer of all enemies. Homage at the heart, her fingers adorn her with three jewel mudra, light ray masses all excited, all directions wills adorn her. Homage she so joyous, radiant, crown emitting garlands of light, mirthful laughing with Tutare, subjugating Mara's devas. Homage she able to summon all earth guardians assembly, shaking, frowning with her whom sign, saving from every misfortune. Homage crown adorned with crescent, moon all ornaments most shining. Amitabha in her hair knot, sending out much light eternal. Homage she mid wreath ablaze like eon ending fire abiding. Righteous left and choice around you, troops of enemies destroying. Homage she who strikes the ground with her palm and with her foot beats it, scowling with the letter whom the seven levels she does conquer. Homage happy, virtuous, peaceful, she whose field is peace nirvana, she endowed with Om and Soha, destroyer of the great evil. Homage she with joy surrounded, tearing foes' bodies asunder, frees with whom in knowledge mantra, arrangement of the 10 letters. Homage Turi with seed letter, of the shape of syllable, whom by foot stamping shakes the 3 worlds, Meru, Mandara, and Vindhya. Homage holding in her hand the hair-marked moon of Deva lake form, with the spoken Tara and Pei, totally dispelling poison. Homage she whom gods and their kings and the Kinnaras do honor, armored in all joyful splendor, she dispels bad dreams and conflicts. Homage she whose 2 eyes bright with radiance of sun and full moon, twice Hara and Tutare, she dispels severe contagion. Homage full of liberating power by the set of 3 natures, destroys hosts of spirits, yakshas, and raised corpses supreme Ture. These praises with root mantras and prostrations thus are 21.
You notice there, before we go into the 7, that last verse, the last line says, and raised corpses, she who destroys. What are the raised corpses? Living dead, right? Zombies. So if you have any friends who are into zombie apocalypse, you can tell them to recite that verse particularly. Okay.
O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tare, savioress heroine, with Tutare dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Ture, to her with sound Soha I bow. O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tare, savioress heroine, with Tutare dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Ture, to her with sound Soha I bow. O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tare, savioress heroine, with Tutare dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Ture, to her with sound Soha I bow. O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tare, savioress heroine, with Tutare dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Ture, to her with sound Soha I bow. O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tari, Savior's heroine, with Tutari dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Turi, to her with sound Soha I bow. All my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tari, Savior's heroine, with Tutari dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Turi, to her with sound Soha I bow. O my prostrate to the goddess, foe destroyer, liberating Lady Tara. Homage to Tari, Savior's heroine, with Tutari dispelling all fears, granting all benefits with Turi, to her with sound Soha I bow.
So I'm not sure, this has 5 lines, right? But as you see, it's set off here. The first line is set off like the first line of the praise to the 21 Taras that's on page 192 that says, Om Je Summa Pakma Droma La Chaksalo, Om I prostrate to the noble transcendent liberator, female liberator. Om Chomden Dema Lamo Droma La Cha, almost the same thing. I'm thinking that if you recited this many times, in the same way that you recite the 21 praises, you don't always have to recite that first line by itself. You just continue with the 21. I'm not sure. You might want to check with Rinpoche that if you yourself were collecting tens of thousands of this, after the first time saying this, you might just continue with the 4, but I'm not sure. This is interesting. This is on, I take it. How's everyone? We okay? So let's continue. So just to read that last example on page 123, or the last 2 paragraphs. Recognizes movement of the mind, whatever conceptual thoughts are generated, and without blocking them, focus on their nature. Remember, this was in kind of explaining what it means, seeing that stillness and movement are integrated. So that means you're watching the stillness, the clear light nature of the mind, single-pointed, and even there's some movement of the mind, not to get distracted, tension, pushing that out of the way, just let that be. Look at its nature, let it dissipate, or even in the extent that that doesn't help, there's some strong part of your mind that's multitasking on that. Don't pay attention so much to the content, just to its movement. It's going from one thought to another, like the crow that was left off, or the bird. There wasn't necessarily a crow on these ships in ancient times, up on the, what's it called, the crow's nest? Oh, maybe it was crow. They call it crow's nest. Let the bird go, they'd circle around, and if they, not only they up high and they see long distance, but they can circle out. They have an idea that, they know when they get tired, they got to, the halfway, they know when their half energy is gone, right? So they come back. So you would know that there's no land close. So there's no destination that our thoughts will eventually go to. Eventually, they will dissipate and come back to the ship, the clear light nature of your mind. This is similar to the example of the bird that flies from a boat. As it is said, like the crow that flies off a boat, and after circling it, lands on it again. Having practiced in this way, the nature of any equipoise is a space of vacuity, since it is non-obstructing, lucid, clear, and unobstructed by anything material. So 2 words in there, non-obstructing, that means from its side the mind doesn't obstruct thoughts coming and going, and it's not obstructed by the body or anything material. It is lucid and clear, that clear light nature of the mind. The lucidity here, I think, refers to the illuminating quality. When we talk about what clear light nature means, sometimes the example I mentioned before, like a mirror, if something arises before the mirror doesn't have to do anything. It automatically arises in the aspect of that. So it has a certain sense of, when we talk about clear light nature, that's one sense of it. The mind has that reflective nature, that lucid nature, and it's unobstructing and clear. So having practiced in this way, and when it says the nature of any equipoise, I think that means any of your equipoise on the Mahamudra is a space of vacuity, since it is non-obstructing, lucid, clear, and unobstructed by anything material. It is also vivid, since anything can appear. Well, maybe that's more like the mirror. Anything can appear in it. The reality of mind is indeed perceived directly with insight, but it can't be indicated, grasped at, or named as this or that. What is this meaning? It's not saying that you have perceived it directly. It's saying the reality of the mind can be perceived directly, barely, not just with a mental image. How does that come about? Through continual practice. I think this clear light nature of the mind is what we call a hidden phenomena. Do you know, have you heard that term before? Okay. Robbie, you're one of the older students. You know, three kinds, if hidden phenomena is one of the three categories, what are the other two categories of phenomena? We say manifest phenomena, those that don't need any reasoning to perceive, such as bodies, trees, houses. You perceive them directly with your senses, sounds, smells, tastes. Those are called manifest phenomena, direct phenomena. Hidden phenomena are things that you need to rely, the first time to realize them, you need to rely on a logical reasoning. Like, say, there are some hidden phenomena that you can't experience by just exploration, like the emptiness and so forth. There's some hidden phenomena that you can discover by exploration, like, for instance, the dark side of the moon. Before we sent up satellites, unless you had clairvoyance, they didn't know what the dark side of the moon looked like. Do you remember? For us at that point, that was a hidden phenomena. A hidden phenomena is one which is capable to be perceived with direct perception, but it is at the present, in order to perceive it, you need to rely on some logical reason. Like, say, even though we don't actually see the far side of the moon, we see pictures of it coming back from the space satellites now, so we can we get an idea what that looks like. That might be a terrestrial hidden phenomena. Or if there was a cylindrical building in the distance, from the opening at the top, there's billowing smoke coming out. And maybe you smell some of it. It's not just dust. You know that it's smoke. What can you reason, through reasoning, what can you infer is within that building? Fire. Where we say where there's smoke, there's fire, right? It's called the correct effect sign. Due to the result or effect, fire, smoke, you can infer the existence of fire, which at the moment is obscured to you. It's a hidden phenomenon to you at the moment. But that also, you can walk up to the building and look over the edge or look through something and see there's fire, verify it. So it is capable of being able to be perceived directly, but at first, from the distance, you need to rely on a logical reasoning. Emptiness falls into that category, what's called hidden phenomena. You can't, from my point of view, you can't, through modern science, you might think through modern science, through some kind of investigation or experiments, discover you know, like see the backside of the moon or look into the thing and see the fire, you could see emptiness. From my understanding, emptiness is not that, but it can be perceived directly through the avenue of recognizing it, developing a mental image, having a correct, factually concordant mental image of it, again and again, meditating on that. And over time, on the paths of accumulation and meditation, accumulation and preparation, both the Hinayana path, Mahayana path, you're familiarizing that first with single-pointed concentration, like we do here, first of all, the Mahamudra, with the clear light nature of the mind, then with penetrative insight, vipassana, analyzing that, and the mental image, your factually concordant mental image, is becoming more and more in accord or concordant with the reality that it's reflecting, right? In a sense, like the veils being lifted, and or another way of saying that mentally, factually concordant mental image, as though it absorbs eventually into the actual object of emptiness, and you have a bare, direct perception. It make sense? No, not so much. All of you look. What did he say? A lot of words. Come on.
One more time.
One more time. So, how is that process? So, emptiness is a hidden phenomena. It can't be perceived originally like we can see ordinary objects that are manifest. In order to first get to prove its existence, we need to rely on some logical reasoning. This thing that seems so vivid, like the self, doesn't exist that way, because if it was inherently existent, independent of other causes and conditions, it couldn't change. And I know that I myself change from moment by moment, so forth. Using various logical reasonings, if you can refute that which your mind is believing to be there, there's still the appearance of Santa Claus, remember? Like I gave you the example of Joey. Is Joey out in the hallway there? He came in a little while ago. Oh, Joey's there. So Joey, you're Santa Claus. When you're a little kid, you think that not only it appears as Santa Claus, but it is Santa Claus. Later, when you're 10 and you think your kid brothers, they're dumb, they believe that. That's just Joey. You know that there's no Santa Claus there. It still appears. But maybe you had to rely on some reasoning, like, why was that Santa Claus costume up in Joey's room? And how come Joey's never here when Santa Claus comes down the steps? And then later maybe you have a direct perception of Joey dressing up as Santa Claus or something. So you have to, for emptiness, you have to first you have to address it through a mental image which is brought about through reasoning. So it is called a hidden phenomena. I believe the clear light nature of the mind is the same. It is a hidden phenomena that you don't, just looking at the mind itself, at first you can't perceive it. I may be wrong. I believe it's a hidden phenomena, and you need to approach it by developing a mental image of it, which becomes more and more factually concordant. Does that phrase now not seem so foreign? Something which accords with how it actually is. Maybe there's a more colloquial phrase that we would use. And as you're meditating on that and the mental image is becoming more and more factually concordant, more and more precise, it's as though it dissipates and absorbs into the actual object the clear light nature of the mind. So that's a hidden phenomena. What's the third category, Robbie? I thought you guys, deeply hidden phenomena. So what are deeply hidden phenomena? You might think emptiness is deeply hidden. Actually, emptiness is not a deeply hidden phenomena. It can be recognized through reasoning like this. Deeply hidden phenomena are things that even 10th level bodhisattvas who have realized emptiness and other things cannot perceive other than by relying on the presentation by the omniscient mind, by the Buddha, The Buddha said, example is given, like Nagarjuna's texts, Precious Garland. By charity, there are resources. Through ethics, there is high status, something like that. Do you know that verse? So what it's talking about is karma. You create the karma to have resources in the future by giving, through generosity. You create the karma to have high status, that means being born as a human or God, through the practice of ethics. So that much is not a hidden phenomena, but it's alluding to this, like say in the Jataka tales and the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. I was mentioning at breakfast this morning. At one point, a very poor couple gave a couple gave a loaf of bread, piece of bread, to the Buddha on alms round. And the Buddha said, "Oh, in the future, you will be born as a pratyeka Buddha, achieve arhatship in this world system at that time with the name thus and thus." And the other people around were saying, Buddha, what's it called? Sucking up to the people, exaggerating so they'll give you more things. And the Buddha said, how could all of that come from just offering one loaf of bread or one piece of bread? Well, I had some Kleenex here, but it's gone. I was going to offer you some Kleenex. Someone absconded with my Kleenex. No, I was just thinking for the Venerable she needs. Who absconded with my Kleenex? Venerable, take some. Yes. So the Buddha said, you see that big tree that I think they generally refer to the banyan tree, that was a huge trunk, of course, but so big that you could, in one big one that had been there for a long, long time, you could park 100 or even 1,000 carts, ox carts under it. That'd be pretty big. That'd be like a big shopping center, right? 1,000 cars, but carts maybe they're smaller. So he pointed to this tree and he said, did that tree, where did that come from? And they said, oh, that came from a seed, Buddha. And he said, was that seed very big? And they said, no, it comes from a teeny, teeny little seed. And the Buddha said, like that, from small actions created, virtuous actions, let's say, or of course negative actions also, can multiply over time and have incredibly large results. So you shouldn't demean what I said, that by this action of just offering a very simple thing, that there could be this result of becoming a pratyeka Buddha and so forth in the future. You know the story of King Ashoka? Did I mention that in the Jataka tales? Play it again. So many of you weren't here. You should feel that you want to go back and look at the fine recordings that Chris and Brian made of the Jataka tales. Did you make recordings of them? Did you make also the Sunday morning? I'm not sure, because that was a Sunday morning. You got that too? Yes. Sir. You might go back and listen to them if you weren't here. I mentioned to Geshe Gelik that there weren't many people for that seminar, and he said, I don't know, they must have thought they're just kids' stories or fables or something. That's, it's one of the 6 core volumes of the Kadampa Geshes when they study especially about karma and cause and effect and everything. So at 400 years after the time of Buddha, something like that, there was a king in India called Ashoka. Nowadays, that name Ashoka is enshrined in India, but because how the Indian language has evolved, in modern Hindi, instead of saying Ashoka, they leave off the final A. So it's Hotel Ashok or Ashok Marg or something like that. Same way with Neela's son, Anand. Actually, Anand, if you add the final A, is Ananda. That's the name of the Buddha's was the name of the Buddha's attendant, right? Ananda. So sometimes you may think, what's going on? It's because the modern colloquial language leaves off that final A. Instead of saying Rajaputra, they say Rajput. Raj stands for Raja, king. Put stands for Putra, son. So son of the king means prince. There's a region in India called Rajput, or it's a town, right? So, why am I telling you that? Deeply hidden phenomena. Ashoka. Yeah, Ashoka. So King Ashoka. So at first he was not a Buddhist, although Buddhism was prospering in the country. You know this story. And at one point in a battle, even though he was king, he was there, and he saw one of his soldiers with a sword. One of the cavalry of the enemy was coming, and to get him, he sliced the belly of the horse, the mare. Mare is a female horse? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the horse fell so he could attack the rider. And the mare was pregnant, and her stomach opened, her womb was exposed. She was dying, but she still was licking her baby that was coming out. And he thought, oh my gosh, even a dying beast has compassion for her child. What about me? So that was a seminal event in his life, and he became a Buddhist, a very ardent Buddhist, and made it edicts to create hundreds of thousands of stupas, reliquary monuments to the Buddha. Became a Buddhist. And the famous pillars upon which there are various inscriptions praising the Buddha throughout India, called the Ashoka pillars. Archaeological. Yes. Oh yes, thank you. Okay, leave it for her. She when that one finishes, she'll have yours. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah. Yeah. And if someone offers to you as a sangha, you should still accept, even if you don't need right now, So, yeah. So, people asked, what was the cause? People would think, what was the cause of his ability to give this command? They have 100,000 stupas made at one time, many pillars throughout India. It said that in a previous life, during Shakyamuni's time, so that was about 400 years before, so I don't know if he had been in animal realm or something in between, but in that previous life, he was a little boy when the Buddha Shakyamuni was around, and the Buddha was on his alms round in town, and there were people around, and he and his friends wanted to make offering to the Buddha, but they didn't have anything. So I was thinking of David and Karen's 3 grandsons. There's River and Arlo and Boomer. Boomer's the little, maybe Boomer would be the one on the top because he's the smallest, but anyway, one stood up, one got on the other shoulder, the third one, who would be in the future, Ashoka, was on top, and he had a handful of sand, and as the Buddha went by, he dropped it in the Buddha's bowl. Maybe someone watching might think, oh, how terrible, you're getting the sand in the Buddha's bowl. Buddha's experience, everything is experienced in one taste of great bliss, so there's no problem there. But the Buddha knew this and was very pleased. The boy who, the previous life, I can't remember what he was called at that life, that put it in the bowl, visualized it as gold. I'm offering gold to the Buddha. And it said, the Buddha prophesied that as a result of this, you would become a great king, like a Chakravartin, who wasn't complete emperor of 4 continents, but emperor of a large area of India, who will be able to build these monuments to the Buddha. So the fact that the stupas, the fact that he didn't offer real gold, is immaterial here. He visualized it as gold. It created so much merit that he became a king and was able to give an edict to build these stupas. It's said, though, that if when we're making offerings, if we visualize the offering that we're making as very extensive and of highest quality, like Ashoka, we'll have very great results. But even better, if you have the ability to offer actual gold, you should do so. Because, example here, had the little boy actually offered gold grains or gold, those stupas that he was able to construct wouldn't have just been concrete and stone. He would have been able to offer real golden stupas. So the research, the karmic result will be vast, even if you visualize. But if you can offer in your mandala, they said that wealthy people shouldn't just have, make a mandala of sand and, offer to the Buddha. You should use precious jewels and gold and things like that. Okay, so this kind of thing, to know the exact cause and effect between, like, the boy putting this sand in the Buddha's bowl, visualizes gold. When is that going to ripen? In what way will it ripen? All of the details of that is a deeply hidden phenomena. Although even the other disciples would be able to say, oh, there will be great results from this offering to the Buddha, they understand cause and effect, that by generosity there will be resources, you will receive resources in the future, but they couldn't see the exact details. This is what's called a deeply hidden phenomena. One can only know those through the efficacy of relying on the omniscient mind giving explanation or prophecy. When the Buddha, that's why we say when the Buddha explained about karma, if you do this, if you fish, you will be born in a future life with a hare lip. Or if you do this, there will be this result. Those kind of proclamations of the Buddha are said to be definitive teachings about karma. Are we okay? Ahmed? You have to go? Okay. So those the manifest phenomena are what we generally perceive. Hidden phenomena, we can give some examples in the world that are temporarily hidden, like the fire or the dark side of the moon or something, but emptiness and maybe clear light nature of the mind. Even subtle impermanence, I believe, is a hidden phenomena. It has to be addressed over a period of time, first having a mental image of that, the reasoning, and then as that mental image becomes more and more factually concordant, it absorbs into the actual phenomena of subtle impermanence. Okay? So three kind of levels of phenomena. This reality of the mind is indeed perceived directly with insight. That is, the way that it is perceived directly is with penetrative insight, vipassana, having analyzed it. Right now we just have a mental image, but when you continue on that, when you have penetrative insight and you're able to analyze within that calm state of mind, the example of the difference between calm abiding and penetrative insight, vipassana? The calm abiding is like when a pool of water, like I gave the example before of the horses running through the pool of water, the army, once they've gone through, 20 minutes, half an hour later, the dirt can settle, the surface is again calm. Like that, developing tranquil abiding is like having a calm pool of water of your mind. Penetrative insight is then you have to train your mind like putting a koi fish or a goldfish into that pool, tossing it in at first, is swimming around, and the water, you can see, if you ever go to a pool and they think you're bringing food, there's all this agitation on the water. You ever see that? And especially in Tibet, because in many places people didn't fish in Tibet. As soon as you came to the shore, the fish came, rather than here, if you come to the shore, the fish go away, right? Because they know you're going for them. So at first, when you begin to try to analyze, you've got that tranquil abiding, calm abiding on the clear light nature of the mind. You've already realized personal selflessness, let's say, and then you want to try to analyze that with vipassana, to have the insight that actually can lead to a direct realization of emptiness. That fish-like analysis at first will agitate the mind, the calmness. So you have to learn how within that calm state of mind to analyze without causing the mind to lose its stability and without giving rise to the disturbing thoughts like the mud from the bottom that the fish can cause as they're swimming around. So like very skillful koi fish or goldfish swimming like that. So when it says here, this reality of the mind, talking about the clear light nature here, is indeed perceived directly with insight. That means it can be perceived directly, eventually, with penetrative insight. That means what? Vipassana. But it can't be, even if you've realized it, it can't be indicated, grasped at, or named as this. What does that mean? Can't be named empty or clear light nature? Can it be pointed at? even the clear light mind has this. When we talk about emptiness, some of the praises to the perfection of wisdom, what does it say? Anyone know this? Masam Jome Sherab Paro Chin. Oh, I can't remember the last time. The praise at the beginning of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, praising the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And the experience of that wisdom, the experience of emptiness, masam, unimaginable. That means you can't actually, with the conceptual mind, when we talk about imagination, you can't actually directly imagine it. You can imagine it. It doesn't say that you can't imagine emptiness. In fact, we have to imagine it. We have to have a mental image. But that mental image is not the real thing. It's like, can you imagine now keto chocolate bar? You know, stevia, cocoa, what was else in it? Butter, or what do you put it? Heavy cream. You can imagine that. Can you imagine that? But in imagining it, are you actually tasting it, experiencing it? Your imagination, you can say you can imagine it, but you can't imagine the actual taste of that, right? Until you taste it, maybe you could have a remembering consciousness, but just talking about till you haven't realized emptiness, until you've realized emptiness, you can't have a remembering consciousness of it. So you can't, when it says unimaginable, it doesn't mean you can't imagine it, but you can't imagine, through imagination or conception, you can't have a conceptual understanding which is the same as the direct realization. Masam Jome means inexpressible. Well, Buddha says it's like space, it's always like. It's not actually expressing emptiness like this is a radio transmitter or this is the microphone transmitter, you know, expressing something directly. You can't express emptiness directly with words, written words or without. It's something that has to be tasted yourself. Venerable, you have a question?
Venerable George, at the beginning of the Heart Sutra, are you referring to the verse of homage that's sometimes attributed to Rahula?
What does it say?
I pay homage to the Sublime Mother, the victorious ones of the three times, the inexpressible, inconceivable, and indescribable perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceasing, and has the nature of space.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I think just that much, yeah. So okay. I forgot that was attributed. You know who Rahula was?
Buddha's son.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a reggae.
Well, that too,
sounds like,
but...
Yeah. Rahula. Sounds like someone like that, right? Rahula was the son of Buddha, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did he have that son? He was a monk, wasn't he?
Well, it was before he went out,
before
left
he
the
left
palace.
home. And there are two different versions. One is that he was born the evening that the Buddha left, or in close proximity, and the Buddha is almost like nowadays he might have been arrested for abandoning the child or something. The other version is that Rahula remained in the mother's womb for 6 years. And when he was born, Buddha had already was on the verge of attaining enlightenment. Anyway, later Rahula came and wanted to sort of get his, what would you say, his due as the heir to the Buddha, you know. And the Buddha, but Rahula had a lot of attachment, a lot of attachment to, you know this story?
No, but I think it's really funny. It says heir to the Buddha.
Yeah. So Rahula was very attached to beautiful women. So when the Buddha was visiting his former home, Rahula was there and was in presence, and the Buddha handed him his alms bowl and started walking away. And Rahula he was walking after the Buddha, carrying the alms bowl. Buddha walked to the monastery. The gates were closed. Now Rahula's in the monastery. And the Buddha asked, I'm not sure who, Shariputra Mahamudra, to ordain him as a monk. So Rahula became a monk. At first, he was having incredible problems meditating, practicing, because he had this great attachment for women. And the Buddha told him that he gave him a glimpse of the God realm, the women in the God realm. So beautiful. And it's said that compared to the women in the God realm, that the Buddha created this appearance through his karma, his magic power, not making up some fake image, actually showed him what the women looked like there. So beautiful that the women on earth looked like monkeys compared to that. So the most, most beautiful. And so Rahula was able to develop some renunciation, wanting to be born in the God realm. So that was how the Buddha, knowing these skillful means, step by step, to lead people in a skillful way. Not politically correct, yeah. I noticed there was an article in the news not too long ago, it's probably still findable, that it was like in some Variety or some not that high quality magazine. It said, bad opinion of the week. Did you see this? And it was about the Dalai Lama. It said, the Dalai Lama said that if he is reincarnated, he might reincarnated as a woman. But if he was reincarnated, bye Jeff, but if he was reincarnated as a woman, it would have to be a beautiful woman. And that's for the woke movement. It was like, whoa, why does it have to be beautiful? Don't you appreciate, But you understand why? Skillfully, to have charisma to induce people, beauty does have some attractiveness. So when we talk about the qualities that we want to try to create, by keeping very beautiful morality, ethics, you create the cause to have an attractive form, especially by the practice of patience. So I think His Holiness was referring to, that charisma that would be necessary if he were to come back to be born like that, but taken in a very common way, okay. So I'm just 4 minutes and 45 seconds over. Just going to read a little bit more. So that the reality of the mind is indeed perceived directly with insight. Can be, and if it is directly perceived, it's not perceived with ordinary mind, it's perceived with this gnosis that comes about, this penetrative insight, the vipassana, that's why it's insight. But it can't be indicated, you can't indicate it with words, it can't be grasped at or named as this or that. It's something that you have to taste. It's not enough for, I forgot, Susan? What was your name? Who made the chocolate? Patty. You know, Patty can't, just telling the recipe, you can't taste her keto chocolate. It's been described to me, and I haven't tasted it yet because I thought it had sugar in it, but I will tell you tomorrow. There's supposedly 2 left, or 1, maybe not sure, Dave's not sure if there's 2 left or none left. I will tell you if I can actually taste it. And even then, I won't be able to, even can I indicate to you, express to you how it tastes? I can say it's like this, but it's not the real taste, right? So emptiness is like that. You can. So then, these days, that means at the time of the first Panchen Lama, or also called the fourth Panchen Lama, these days, most of the great meditators of the land of snows, what's the land of snows? Tibet. Not Canada, right? These days, most of the great meditators of the land of snows agree that placing the mind in a relaxed manner on whatever dawns without grasping, like this superficial understanding of the Mahamudra, is renowned as instruction kindling Buddhahood. You know, leading, you just keep on that. I, the author, Chukyi Gyaltsen, say that for beginners like ourselves, this is an amazing, skillful method establishing stillness of the mind and a way to introduce the conventional mind, the conventional nature of the mind. It's not meditation on emptiness yet, right? Just, you know, I had mentioned, alluded to anyway, that in the Kargyu tradition, for a long time in my life, when I first studied, there was a kind of exposition when the Kargyu Lamas would be talking about Mahamudra that was in their tradition, maybe as a, what's the word, didactic method. They would say, now you're realizing the ultimate nature of the mind, the clear light nature of the mind. The Gelugpa Lamas were pulling their hairs out. That's not the ultimate nature of the mind. That's the conventional nature of the mind, in accordance with Chukyi Gyaltsen. So sometimes it may be that there are ways in Dzogchen and some Mahamudra traditions that with a suitable line of reasoning, like what we do when we have first recognized the conventional nature of the mind. Remember, I said we will try to, within that calm mind, recognize the object of negation of personal selflessness, refute that, have an experience of the emptiness of the selflessness, and then apply that same reasoning to the mind. They have a way of meditating using some simple reasonings also, perhaps that would indicate that this they would then say this mind that's appearing is the ultimate nature. But generally, that's not the Gelugpa position. And Chukyi Gyaltsen, starting from the Panchen Lama, says, I, Chukyi Gyaltsen, you know, that's good, that's well enough. All of these, so many, these days, most of the great meditators in Tibet, the land of snows, agree that placing the mind in a relaxed manner on whatever dawns without grasping, so again, this is just talking about the conventional mind, it's not talking about the analysis of emptiness, is renowned as instructions kindling Buddhahood, you know, as though it's a realization of emptiness. But I, mere Chukyi Gyaltsen, say that for beginners, and beginners, it could mean people to begin the tantric path. We're not ready yet to do with the clear light nature of the mind, the subtlemost clear light nature of the mind through practice of Tantra. We could say we're beginners. Do you feel offended if I say we're beginners? Oh, we're beginners. I, Chukyi Gyaltsen, say that for beginners, this is an amazing, skillful method for establishing the stillness of the mind. Remember, that brings about an object of tranquil abiding, and a way to introduce the conventional mind. You know, you're actually coming face to face and recognizing the conventional nature of the mind. Okay, good. We got a good way through. Okay. So tomorrow we'll be able to finish, I think, for sure. So we've done our Tara praises. Let's do a little, I've gone over, it's 4:40, and I know there's some little meeting a little bit later for some of us. So I won't do any meditation right now, but I would ask you, like, homework assignment. Tonight, meditate as we've done. Do the 9-round breathing of meditation. Calm your mind. Sit comfortably. What's today? Saturday. Turn off the TV. Don't watch Saturday Night Live. Meditate on Mahamudra. And after doing the 9-round breathing, having taken refuge in generating bodhicitta, place your mind in that state without any expectations or worries. That means without following any thoughts that are attractive or being fearful of anything, having unpleasant thoughts. Just try to see, even if the thoughts are there, try to see the space between them. Try these various methods and see which works. See the space between the thoughts, and if there's a space when the thoughts are a little bit quiet, just try to hold that single-pointedly. Keep that in mind. If other thoughts come up, recognize them as what they are, just conceptual thoughts. Let them go. If they get some of your energy, analyze them. They could only be there if there was spaciousness of the mind. Focus on that spaciousness, let it disappear. Or ask yourself, what is the mind that's perceiving this? The conscious element, cognizing element of the mind. Even if you follow something for some time, don't worry. Just hold back. Don't pay attention to all the details of the ruminations of your mind, like the crow flying around. Eventually, it'll come back to the clear light nature of mind. Focus on that for as long as you can, and then dedicate the merits at the end. That's your homework assignment. You think you can do that? At least a little. Jack? Yeah, Jack? Scary back there? You have to tell him that he's got a homework assignment. He has to do it a little bit longer because he wasn't here. Okay. So let's do a short dedication then. From my side, I feel very fortunate. I feel I might have created some virtuous karma, subduing my ego a little bit, talking about the Dharma, and from all of our sides, thinking about the Dharma this morning with a attempt to have motivated at the beginning to do so, to achieve enlightenment for the welfare of others. We've created a vast store of merit. Undedicated, this merit may ripen, like a horse left to its own devices may go to the lower field where the clover is, or over there where the nice sweet river water is. But if you hold the reins of the horse, you can get it to go to where you want to go. So like that, aspiring, making a very strong aspiration, we call dedication in this case, may these merits ripen eventually through the process of my spiritual development from life by life, life to life. Eventually may they ripen in my achievement of perfect enlightenment, where I can spontaneously and effortlessly benefit all sentient beings, and not waiting to benefit them until that point. Along the line, whatever way this ripens, may I become a kinder person, helping other sentient beings, my mothers of the past. May I rub off my rough edges so I don't harm them first. Then may I actually be able to benefit them all along the line of my spiritual development until I reach a state of enlightenment when I can best help them perfectly, effortlessly, and spontaneously. Wow, I want to dedicate the merits to that goal. Due to these merits, may I quickly become fully enlightened Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. If you have an understanding of emptiness, you can seal this dedication. This is what we might call conventional dedication, what we usually think of as dedication. Seal this in what's called the emptiness of the three spheres. The actions that I've created, virtuous actions, I might have some kind of sense that they really exist. I really did this. I had good mind, I meditated, I left some karmic instincts. Those karmic seeds that I've deposited in my mind stream do not exist inherently. They'll function, but like the self, like the reflection in the glass door of the hotel, like the echo, they're empty of what our mind is attributing to them, some inherent existence. Meditate on the emptiness of them. Meditate on the emptiness of the goals dedicated to by gradual spiritual development that seems kind of imaginable, as though it really would exist from its own side. Even the state of enlightenment, merely imputed by the mind, it doesn't exist from its own side. Although it appears and functions, it's empty of inherent existence. So focus on that emptiness, the goal of the goal, or the goals, plural. And the process of dedicating, trying to join, aspiring that these virtues would ripen in those ways, it's a process. You can't find dedication that we think, I made a strong dedication. You can't find it anywhere. It's not on the first moment, the second moment. It's just a name that we designate to that process. Dedication is also empty of inherent existence. Dedicating this way is called dedicating in the emptiness of the three spheres. And it seals, protects those virtuous actions that we've dedicated from being destroyed by anger or other minds, abandoning the Dharma or so forth. So thank you for your patience. It's 4:48. I'm sorry, went over 18 minutes. Thank you very much. Hope to see you tomorrow or see you on YouTube. You wave to me on YouTube, see if I respond. I probably won't respond.